Welcome, merry listeners, to the Breaking Script podcast with Lala and Nini.
This is where we unwrap the enchanting world of Hallmark movies and the occasional Asian dramas.
As we dive into these cinematic journeys, we're not just recapping, we're embarking on a therapeutic adventure.
Think of it as our cinematic self-care session.
And no, we're not just casual spectators. We're here to dissect the undercurrent messages, unravel the complexities, and even spot those not-so-magical moments of unhealthy behaviors.
And through it all, we'll be infusing our own unique perspectives and life experiences along the way.
Get ready to snuggle up as we explore the cheer, the charm, and the occasional cheesy wonder of these festive films. Welcome back to the Breaking Script podcast with Lala and Nini. I'm Lala, a non-French speaking French-Canadian.
And I'm Nini, a first-generation ABC, American-born Chinese, that speaks broken Chinglish.
And if you're new to the Breaking Script podcast, we are sisters-in-law on a mission to spread joy and glimmers while offering ways to open windows of tolerance through watching Hallmark movies and The Way Home.
We have 4 unique segments that give you a guide to review what we like to call breaking script with the healthy and unhealthy romantic and family relationships, as well as healthy and unhealthy behaviors in these movies. So we always start with a movie summary or an episode recap that's like an audio spa. So even if you haven't had a chance to watch the movie or don't have access, you'll still experience it as if you did. That way you can follow along our Boba ratings and the 4 unique segments of breaking script that magically turns your Hallmark movie watching or the Way Home watching into a more meaningful self-care session. Lala, I hate, okay, you don't see the previews at the end. Did you
No.
see after this episode? I hate how they did the previews. They put up 2 more episodes until the finale, but it totally like wigged me out because I was like, wait, what? That's confusing. There's 3 more episodes. Why would you say
Yes,
2 more
2 more
episodes
episodes.
until the finale?
Yeah, that is very confusing. They should have
Why would
just
you do
been
that?
like, there's 3 more episodes left in the series, or I don't know, something like that. Mental math.
Come on.
No, that is my qualm with Canadian television, and it's the W network. They do not show the preview of next week, and literally when I get to the end of the episode, there's still like 5 minutes left, and it literally records just the end screen. And I watch always to the end, and it's not like 5 minutes, like 3.
Yeah.
By the time the commercial hits and you watch the commercial and you think, oh, there's still like a minute left, they're going to tell you. It happens every time. And there's never a preview. And actually, like, you can ask my husband, my favorite part of every show, I always tell him this, is the preview for the next one. I love when shows do that. So I typically like will search online, like on YouTube, but the one that they didn't post an extended one yet when I looked, and it was just that
It's on there
20-second
now.
one. Oh, is it? Okay,
We'll
I'll
link
watch
it in the show
after.
notes.
It's always just like a really fast 30-second clip that teases you but doesn't really give you that much.
They
So I'm excited
packed a lot in this one this time, I feel like. But I have to say, we'll get into it, but I have apologies to make to the show. If you guys haven't already, could you stop what you're doing and go to all your platforms and subscribe to our podcast? But also, we're on YouTube, so you can comment now.
Yay!
On our YouTube, we've got just select episodes up on there, but all of The Way Home, because we have to discuss. Post on social media, hashtag The Way Home, because we don't know if there's going to be a season 3 yet.
No.
Is that insane? There is uncertainty, and people are saying, get it out there. Hashtag The Way Home. We need a season 3.
Do we know, is it because did viewership go down, or is it literally a better project?
They haven't explained. They're just saying there's uncertainty. Like, it hasn't been renewed. And I am freaking out. Like, you don't understand. You can't not have a season 3. Just, it's not okay.
Are you serious?
Yes, but my heart has been broken this week because I haven't watched it yet because my nervous system isn't quite there yet, but I cannot wait to watch Brother's Son. that has
Mm.
Michelle Yeoh. Like
Mhm.
a friend of mine was like, "Oh my gosh, it's so good." Like when we watch things like American Born Chinese on Disney Plus, it like we feel seen. Like there's healing through
Mm.
it because we've never seen it on the screen like that before. But those two shows got canceled. And I don't
Mm.
care. We're still gonna have to review it on the pod at some point. It breaks my heart.
Yeah.
But what's that show? There was one show where like fan raves like got it to come back. There's a show that like got canceled, but fans like revolted.
Oh, I don't know what you're I can't think of the title, but didn't like it got taken off network because they didn't renew it and it came onto like a streaming platform picked it up and they kept doing it? Is that what you're
Was it
talking about?
Arrested Development? No.
Well, that one came back way later, but that could be it. I don't know, but I feel like what you're talking about is familiar to me, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I know the title.
It just please keep it on the Hallmark Channel. It gives us like a range of it broadens your audience, and I think it gives us a lovely range on Hallmark where it's like, "Ooh, this is
Yes.
engaging."
It's
And then
different.
and then you also offer me where I have to watch something to calm my nervous system afterwards. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
like
will tell you. Go ahead.
well, I'm just like no knock against When Calls the Heart, but like if you put When Calls the Heart up beside The Way Home, it's vastly different. And we
Right.
need that difference, right? Because a lot of
Yes.
Hallmark skews along the When Calls the Heart,
Totally.
area. And this is
Right.
very different. The production value is different, the writing is different, the engagement feels different. So, yes, please stay.
All the things. We'll see. Anyway, 3 more, Lala. We're gonna have to start talking about that could be our intro next week of what are we gonna be watching next?
Yes.
There are Love into Spring or Spring into Love. Love into Spring.
Mm.
Spring into Love is what Hallmark calls their um spring movies, the new ones. Starts with Tyler Hines,
Oh,
Shifting Gears.
wow.
We've already talked about that on March 23rd. But this weekend is Hallmark Mystery. They don't call it Spring into Love, but it's called Crimes of Fashion,
Oh, dear.
Killer Clutch.
No.
Anyway, the
Keep The Way
channels,
Home.
not that you guys have it because you just have the W, but the Hallmark channel names, they're like rebranding. There must be new executives. Hallmark Drama is now called Hallmark Family, which I think that's like more
Okay.
comparison to Great American Family. Instead of Movies and Mysteries, it's called Hallmark Mystery, which I think
Okay.
they're like wanting to stick with more of the mysteries, which we have talked about the fact that you appreciate those more than
Yes.
the regular Hallmark movies. Yeah. And then Hallmark Movie Channel is just regular Hallmark. So anyway, lots of things to look forward to. I have apologies I'll give with my ratings to showrunners and all included, but should we just dive into it today?
Let's do it.
This is the part of our episode where we have an audio spa recap of season 2, episode 7, where the Landry women learn things aren't always as they seem, as each uncovers new past and present truths. Elliot questions how much of Kat's heart is in 1814. This is somewhere only we know. In present day, Kat runs from the pond to the Landry house to collect medicine and supplies to bring back for Jacob. Alice sees her and inquires about what's happening, saying Dell will wake up and shouldn't see Kat like this in her 1814 garb. Kat changes clothes and says she needs to go back because they beat Jacob badly and he could be dying. From inside, Dell sees Kat and Alice arguing outside as she gets a phone call on her cell. Kat tells Alice she has to go, just as Dell comes outside asking Kat where she's going. Dell rides Stormy and follows Kat towards the pond. Dell stops Kat before she jumps in and asks what she's doing. And they go back into the kitchen. Back in the Landry kitchen, Dell throws the Founders Day edition of the Herald down on the table in front of Kat and Alice. She says the mayor's office has been calling, looking for Kat, wanting to know why the edition is a complete embarrassment. Alice says it's her fault, but Kat steps in. Dell asks Alice for a minute alone with Kat. Someone knocks at the door. It's none other than Sam Bishop, who brought coffee for himself and Dell. Inside, Alice tells Kat that they have to tell Dell the truth, but Kat doesn't want to get Dell's hopes up. On the porch, Sam asks Dell to go see a new exhibit, grab lunch, and walk together. But Dell tells him she's busy, and their moonlight swim doesn't make her one of his girls. Sam says he was asking as a friend, and he also noticed that her barn hinges were rusty and he'd be happy to fix them. Del pointedly and appropriately tells her quote-unquote friend that she'll hold on the home improvement conversation for now. As Del returns, Kat sends Alice upstairs, but Alice sits and listens in. Del tells Kat that she lied to the mayor to protect her and tells Kat she's being unreliable and unprofessional. Kat questions if Del is protecting her for her own reputation, and Del demands to know what Kat is hiding. Dun dun dun. Kat asks for Del's trust and a little more time, but Del says that she can't trust Kat given their history. It's appropriate. Kat leaves and Del tells her to just go again. As Del heads upstairs, she sees that Alice heard from the stairs and apologizes that she had to hear it. At the pond, Kat sees Elliot. Alice called him and told him about Jacob. Elliot tells Kat to be safe and warns her that the pond might not let her take her supplies back with her. After she jumps into the pond, Elliot sees the bag of medicine float back up to the top. Outside on the Landry farm, Alice runs into adult Nick, who just got back into town. He's looking for Kat or Elliot and notices the Landry boat still out on their yard. As he reminisces, Alice says she has to get ready for work. In 1814, Kat surfaces at the pond to Thomas waiting nearby. Kat realizes that the pond didn't let her bring the equipment with her, and she curses the pond. Thomas tells her he'll take her to Jacob and hands her men's clothing to change into, as Cyrus has everyone in town looking for the witch who hexed him. In present day, at Elliot's house, he's startled when he sees Nick on his couch. That's just laying there to surprise him. They hug hello, laugh a little. Nick tells Elliot that his mom's told him about how Elliot killed it with his Founders Day speech, and Nick wishes he had been there for him. Nick picks up the Founders Day pin and reveals a punched hole in Elliot's wall. He asks why Elliot hasn't replaced it yet, and he says it's a good reminder of who he doesn't want to be. Nick reminds Elliot that he is nothing like his father Victor. In 1814, Thomas leads Kat to the lighthouse that they're hiding Jacob in. Kat learns that Cyrus is the one who owns the lighthouse, and Thomas believes it's the last place Cyrus will look. Kat heads down the trapdoor inside, and Thomas closes her in. She realizes Susanna is down there with Jacob, and Thomas is keeping watch at the top. Jacob's wounds are in bad shape, and Susanna tells Kat that she needs more herbs, but they can't go into town. Kat will need to gather them in the woods while Susanna stays with Jacob. In present day, at the point as Alice works, Nick and Elliot enter, discussing Del's boat, which Nick is thinking about purchasing. Elliot sees Alice working and tries to get Nick to go to Wally's instead, but Nick wants to eat at the point, a turkey club that he's been dreaming about. Okay. They order with Alice, and Elliot gets their food to go. Nick grabs a copy of the Herald Founders Day edition and notes the amateur layout. He reads about Lincolnmore being for sale and recounts Evelyn being shut up in that house for 17 years after the teenagers trashed it in 2007. Elliot changes the subject from Lincolnmore to their food and takes it to go. On the porch swing at the Landry house, Del asks Rita if she thinks her barn looks rusty. Del feels like Sam pointed it out to tell her that things around her are falling apart and she can't keep up. Rita relays that Sam canceled their second date and he's serious about someone else and is now off the market. Back at the point, Elliot and Nick get their order and Elliot ushers them out. Alice asks Monica about the Lincolnmore party in 2007, and Monica says it wasn't a great moment for the people in this town and avoids it. Alice feels like something bad happened, and Noah believes that the information must be somewhere in the town archives. He suggests that even though Kat's not around, she must have a key to the Herald laying around that they can use. In 1814, Kat and Thomas gather herbs together in the woods. He insinuates that she's a witch as he saw her go into the pond and not surface. Kat begins to tell him why. Just as men arrive in the woods, Thomas grabs Kat and they hit the ground. They see the Goodwin G on the men's boots talking about looking for the witch and celebrating with a bonfire. The men continue on and Kat thanks Thomas for helping her and tells him that she's a time traveler. Kat tells him about the pond being a portal and he laughs. He doesn't ask any more questions and Kat wonders how he doesn't want to know what happens in the future. So he asks about the outcome of the war, and when she tells him it technically ends in a draw, Thomas says Kat would have been more useful to him as a witch. In present day, on the Landry farm, Nick makes an offer to Del on their boat. He says he'll restore it and care for it, as he could really use a project right now. Just as Sam arrives on the farm, Del tells Nick to give her some time to think about it. At the Herald, Noah teases Alice about the layout of the latest edition. They scour the records, and Alice can't find any mention of the event that took place at Lingermore. Alice wonders how it didn't make the news. So she goes and finds physical records of pulled stories that didn't get printed and photoreels, but they need a way to see the film or develop it. Noah has to leave for work and tells Alice they'll talk soon. Back in 1814 at the lighthouse, Kat wonders how Thomas has free reign of the space. He tells Kat that he is actually the lighthouse keeper. Kat heads downstairs as Jacob stirs awake and he doesn't know where he is. His fever is causing his delirium. Kat stumbles back in the lighthouse and bumps into barrels of rum before storming outside. On the beach, in that reminiscent cove, Kat walks and Thomas follows close behind. It's more like she's stomping in a fury. He tells Kat that Jacob isn't the innocent boy she remembers, and Jacob devised a plan to skim rum from the British shipments, and Jacob is the reason the hidden room at the lighthouse even exists. Kat refuses to believe this, but Thomas says Jacob has a responsibility to his family. Kat says she is Jacob's family, and Thomas wonders why she's judging him so harshly then. Kat screams at Thomas that Jacob is dying and she may never get to know him after all this time. She shoves Thomas in anger, and he picks her up and threatens to throw her in the water. Kat says to put her down and ends up breaking down crying in Thomas's arms. In present day, at the Landry house, Del and Sam sit by the fire at night with tea. Sam is surprised that Del called him to come over after that morning, and she says he caught her at a bad time because she was fighting with her daughter at the time. Del apologizes for what she said earlier about not being one of his girls, but Sam says there aren't girls and he's done playing the field. He says he met someone right here and points to Del. He doesn't want her to think she's one of many. Del claims he's being presumptuous, and she's flattered, but she doesn't know that she wants to be in a relationship. And he claims he's just enjoying getting to know his neighbor. At the Cove, Nick and Elliot share beers by the bonfire. Nick reveals that Claire called off their wedding. She got sick of him being gone all the time. Nick says that he loves Claire, but maybe sometimes love isn't enough. And Elliot says the same about him and Kat. In 1814, at the Cove, Thomas brings Kat a drink by the fire and asks for a truce. Kat worries that she'll never get the chance to know Jacob. Thomas reveals that he has lost 2 brothers, and losing Jacob would be like losing a 3rd brother. Kat feels like she is so close and yet so far. Thomas laughs, as Jacob once said the same thing about the stars in the sky. Thomas told Jacob that the distance from the stars or people is not the thing to be worrying about. He says to worry when you can't find them at all. Thomas tells Kat that she still has time and to not lose sight of the stars just yet. In present day, on the Landry farm, Alice calls Noah and leaves him a rambling message. She tries to delete it, but sends it to him anyway. When Alice runs into Nick working on Del's boat, she asks if he heard that message, and he did. In 1814, Kat awakens next to Susanna in the lighthouse cellar. Kat apologizes for getting Susanna into all of this with Jacob in the pond, but Susanna says this was part of her life already, as her father sold rum illegally. Kat tells Susanna she's so grateful to her as Jacob coughs and seizes. Kat heads upstairs to Thomas and says they need to get Jacob to the pond, but Thomas doesn't think it's safe. Kat doesn't care what happens to herself, but Thomas reminds her that she does matter greatly to people. Like Alice, he takes her face in his hands as horses gallop up in the distance. It's Cyrus and his men. Thomas sends Kat back into the cellar and says he will handle it. In present day, at the Point, Rita asks Del for updates on the Herald fiasco and if Kat is issuing a reprint. When Sam walks in, Rita asks Del if she found out who Sam's special someone is, only for Rita to realize, without words, it's Del. Rita assures Del she's okay with her and Sam, and Del takes a seat and joins him. Sam says that he can fix Del's fence next, and then maybe they can talk about doing dinner after. Del then sees a man enter the Point and spaces out as she thinks she's seen Colton. At the Landry farm on the boat, Alice tells Nick how she's terrible at reading signals from boys. Nick tells her that if she thinks someone's worth it, she should tell him how she feels. And it's just then that Noah drives up to the Landry farm, then asking if Alice has the film roll negatives for them to take a look at. In 1814, Cyrus and his men search the lighthouse premises as Kat and Susanna stay in the cellar with Jacob. They hear footsteps and then a gunshot upstairs, and the cellar door opens. They're prepared to fight, but it's just Thomas. The gunshot was Cyrus giving an all clear to his men before leaving. Susanna can still feel a pulse on Jacob, but they don't know how much longer they have. In present day, in Alice's room, Noah runs a program to view the film negatives they found at the Herald. Noah asks if she wants to play some music, and I Want It That Way by Backstreet Boys plays on her phone. Noah sings along and encourages Alice to join in. Outside, Dell tells Nick that she unfortunately can't sell the boat as she's still attached, so it's a no for now. That's when they hear Alice and Noah singing from her room. Nick says Alice's voice is unforgettable. Dell invites Nick to stay for dinner with her and Alice, but he says he should get going. And looks like he's figuring out what's happening. He looks back at Alice's room where she's singing before leaving. Noah and Alice keep singing in her bedroom, and they share a kiss. They realize the program has uploaded the film negatives to the computer, and they study a picture from the file. They see blood, a mask, and glasses, Elliot's glasses, on the ground at Lingermore. At Elliot's house, he reads his journal from October 2007. Among other things, it says, "How can I face Alice again if she ever comes back? And it's all my fault." In 1814, Kat sings Colton's song from their childhood to Jacob in the cellar. As Kat cries at his bedside, Jacob seems to have flashes of his younger self with Dell, Colton, and young Kat on the Landry farm. Suddenly, Jacob gasps awake, opens his eyes, and gasps, "Kat!" And that's the end of Season 2, Episode 7.
Okay, now is a part of our episode where we give this episode, Episode 7, a rating out of 10 bobas. Okay, Nini, what did you rate this episode?
I came back because I was apologetic of my low ratings the last couple episodes. I gave it a 9.
What?
It wasn't a 10 out of 10. Wait, is yours higher? Am I still rating really low?
No, keep going, keep going.
Because this is what happened. This was a weekend this was my first weekend that I didn't have my children Sunday night at 8 p.m. Central Time. And I didn't realize it until a couple days before they were at their dad's. And I was like, that's our thing. Like, we watched The Way Home. And when we all realized it, the kids looked at me, I looked at the kids, and I was like, oh, they're like, you're not going to watch it before us. And I was like, I have to. I have a podcast to record for. And they're like, no. It was so dramatic.
Aww.
Lovely friends. Shout out to all the friends out there that make sure they include their divorced friends. I went to a friend's house, and it was just supposed to be watching with my friend and her daughter.
Yeah.
And I love it so much because it was so engaging that when the husband came home from work, he sat down and watched with us. But they hadn't watched any of Season 2. So we binge-watched. We didn't quite make it to the new one. I had to watch a new one on my own, but we binge-watched 6 episodes.
Whoa.
And that reminded me that when you binge watch them, it's totally different feel than when you're watching it one episode at a time.
Interesting.
Week to week, the vibe is completely different. You appreciate each episode so much more. And I remember doing that. I remember waiting a couple weeks. Like, I wouldn't watch it weekly even when it first came out before I watched it with you in the summer. I remember waiting for a couple episodes to come out, and then I would binge watch. Like, totally different vibes.
That is good to know because maybe the disconnection that we're feeling week to week is just the space and time it takes for us to watch one episode.
Yes,
before the
and
next.
commercials.
And commercials. That is true.
It changes the commercials, and the week to week changes. I highly recommend go back and binge watch. It changes everything. And I also realized this. 2 more things.
Okay.
Well, I'll say one more thing. And then you give it the rating, and then I'll say my last one.
Okay.
The 90s is like 99% responsible for the glimmers in this show, especially through season 1, right? In
Mhm.
season 2, when you go back to the 90s or the early 2000s, it's only giving you more trauma and angst, and you're just anxious waiting for what's the thing that happened at Lingermore in the 2000s that's going to change everything. Everything that happens in the early 2000s here is just pain and cringe.
You're right.
It
Even if
barely
we
Yeah.
sorry, even if we, like, think back to season 1 and the '90s represented warmth and remember the lighting or
Yeah, it
just
was a
even
gold
it
overlay.
was
We
a
don't have
gold
that.
hue. Exactly, we
Yeah.
don't have any of those feels, so we were getting this hard reality mixed with this, cozy, rosy past,
Yeah.
and now we're totally missing that. We're just getting a they're trying to make the reality good, but it's still not great, and then you're going
Yeah.
to, like, either the 1800s, which is dark and hopeless. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's like 1800s doesn't give me any glimmers. I
No,
don't have
no.
any attachment. I don't have their backstories. Anyway, that's why. But I gave it a 9. Okay, what did you give it at?
7.5.
Yeah, I know.
But
But I
now
had
I'm
apologies. I need a
really
season 3.
well, so do I, but now I really like, now what you're making me think is right before maybe the season finale or even or series yeah, season finale or the episode before, so episode 9, maybe I should go back and watch everything
Yeah.
and see how I feel.
And people were saying now that you've gone so far into season 2, if you go I haven't done this yet, and binge watch season 1, you pick up so much.
Hmm,
I did watch one episode because I had to check for something. We'll get to it in the
okay.
way we see it in Dead Ends. Um, where like there's just little things, like even little facial expressions. You're like, oh my gosh, he knew
Oh,
the whole time. Like just little things like that
interesting.
that you'll pick up things. But what I realized is I think my love for Hallmark is hugely due to, I've said this before, the Deck the Hallmark podcast and watching behind the scenes or watching interviews with the cast, which I wouldn't have gone on and done if Deck the
Right.
Hallmark didn't have such brilliant interviews of actual
Mm,
cast members and directors, writers, so on and so forth. I went and I'll link it in the show notes. There's a live interview with Kat, Susanna, and Thomas. So that's
okay.
Kyler, Watson, and Chris. Brilliant. Their chemistry is everything. They're joking about having a musical version of The Way Home because of how musical they all are.
That's funny.
And their band would be the Pond Jumpers. But
Jumpers.
I love watch because they're also musical.
I didn't know
And
that.
that's the other thing about season 2, right? Is
Right.
they didn't have their thank goodness there's probably like we got reintroduced to that this week. Like hopefully there's going to be more of it, but like it was like kismet the way that they all came together. Like there's just something special about this cast. And then I have to go back and apologize for having such a low score and rating for episode 5 because that had the beach scene at the end, and they talk about how intense, like that was their biggest, toughest scene to shoot, where you're at the beach, you have horses, you have firearms, there's actually stunts
Oh,
happening, right?
right.
And Kyler, bless her, that's like she has such emotional, she has the most emotionally intense scenes where like she said even the first time she saw Spencer outside of her trailer, who's
Mhm.
playing adult Jacob, she lost it. And she's like,
Really?
this guy, yeah, she's like, this guy just must think like, at first she's like, oh, cool. He looks like totally like in the pictures. And then all of a sudden it hit her. And she's like, this is
Mm,
who we've been waiting for, and just like overcome with emotion. And she's like
that's funny.
crying and hugging him. And he's like, oh gosh. She's like, he must think I'm crazy. But she was prepared for that beach scene because she was the sister of Supergirl. She was Alex Danvers in Supergirl. Did you ever watch that?
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
I went through a phase. It was when I was going through the Marvel movies with my young teenage sons who are now almost both of them are almost adults. Um, and I had a friend who was like, you should totally binge watch Arrow. And Arrow, Supergirl, and The Flash have like overlapping Anyways, this is becoming very long, but I have my apologies because I realize I just love you guys and I need a third season. And go back and listen to, I'm going to talk about it again in the way we see it, but listen to Deck the Hallmark's interview with Marley Reed, who's the creator of the show. That's the one that I said, like, this was her story she created in college, and she pitched it right after, and it got refused, and she didn't pitch it again until 10 years later. And then Alex Clark is writer, producer, art, showrunner for The Way Home. Her mother co-wrote with her.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That
So
is.
episode 5 and 6 is a lot due to her mother. Episode 6, that like knocked out of the ballpark in season 1, was written by her mother. They both
Wow.
came from Heartland. So anyways, just when you find out these things, you're like, oh, I realize like that's why I love Hallmark so much, because I started digging into like the people behind it, and it makes you fall
Gotcha.
in love with it. It's like a different level because of what it brings to the table. So anyways, we really need to get into it. Shall we do it?
Let's do it.
So our first segment for The Way Home is Home Sweet Home, where we cover glimmers and what we love, and we break down romantic and family relationships. What do you got, Lala?
Not much. I actually did not love this episode, if I'm being honest. Like, I just felt like it was slow moving. And a couple things happened, but it just, to me, felt more like a filler. And that are thinking that they're going to jam pack the last 2 to 3 episodes with stuff. I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest glimmer for me in what season 1 and even season 2 has been leading up to is that Jacob, we're going to say, wakes up. That is the thing we've been waiting for. And it
That was the
happened.
glimmer. Did you not get glimmers when Noah LeBlanc sung Backstreet Boys?
Oh, I could not watch that. It was so cringe.
Were you having trouble?
I really was. I really was. I think also, like, growing up, this is just like my own personal thing. I was never allowed to have boys in my bedroom. So the whole time I kept feeling like Alice is going to get in trouble. There's a boy in her bedroom. I was uncomfortable. Like, I think they're
I
allowed to
did
have
have
boys.
that thought. I totally did have that thought
So
too.
I think
Not
I
gonna
was like
lie.
mixed of like, oh my gosh, Dell is coming home and there's a boy in her bedroom. I don't think Dell cares.
No.
And then singing the song. I mean, okay, this song gives me feels because that reminds me of like I don't even know when that came out, but just my childhood.
Yeah.
And I will, okay, this is just like I've talked about this. I love the wardrobe direction that they're going with Dell. Like, she's so much softer and just, I don't know. There's something very sweet about Dell, and I love the hair up that they've been doing.
Yes.
I don't know. It
Amazing.
just, it's just
Gives
more
it
like
something.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
different, more sophisticated. Um, yeah, I don't. I
Okay.
mean, it was nice. It was a good episode. Like, things happened, but
Yes.
I was just like, okay, finally, I feel like relief. We know Jacob's gonna wake up. For a second,
Yeah.
it was touch and go. We thought he was gonna die.
Right.
He's alive, and he
Yeah.
knows who Kat is.
That was the biggest glimmer. Yeah, that was a disappointment for me, but we'll talk about that. For me, the glimmer I squeezed out of this was that Noah is growing on me.
Oh, really?
Because he actually has a good voice. That
Yeah.
surprised me. And it gave me the glimmers of season 1. Like, I realized most of the glimmers from season 1 came from the nostalgic music.
Gotcha.
And he looks like Brady, but so far hasn't acted like Brady.
Do you
in
think
my
that
opinion.
that was just a coincidence, or do you think that was intentional to find someone who kind of looked like Brady?
That is a question that I want to have one of the writers or someone from the cast, because I want to ask them, like, was that
Yeah,
intentional?
because are we looking too much to something that they actually never meant to happen?
Surely
Or
not.
Yeah,
Surely not. Like, surely they did that on purpose. They had
because
to
the
have.
hair is the same,
But they're
right? Like,
actually a really cute couple.
they are. Like, I actually I've never hated I think the
I did.
first episode, I felt like we were gonna get Brady vibes from Noah, but
Yeah.
that didn't really happen. So I've never like disliked him at all. So I'm happy with it.
I was extra skeptical. Anyways, that's my glimmer. I don't really have anything else besides, I mean, Alice continues to be such an aware, like mature
Hmm.
granddaughter, like just
Yeah,
concerned for both her mom and her grandmother. Like she's still the most mature one in
I
all
know.
of the storylines. Um, yeah, and I loved that Dell rode Stormy at full gallop after Cat. And that Dell and her boundaries with Sam Bishop makes me so happy. Like one moonlight swim doesn't mean I want to be one of your girls. Like, let's hold the home improvement talk for
That's
another day.
funny.
Like, aren't you being presumptuous? I was like, yeah, girl, do it. Set those boundaries. But anyways, that's all I have here in this segment. Do you have anything else?
Nope.
All right, let's move on to Surprising Detours, which for our regular Hallmark movies, this is called, yeah, don't go chasing waterfalls, because this is where we talk about unhealthy behaviors or coping mechanisms. Sometimes the Nar DAR, that's the narcissistic radar, comes out. I didn't feel like I had to pull it out this week. But for the way home, we call this surprising detours because usually there's so many surprises.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we rapid fire some?
Let's do it.
Cat
Do you want
runs
me
home in the White Witch nightgown. That's the cold open. Go ahead. You do the rest.
to? Okay, okay. Obviously, I already said this. Jacob remembers Kat and like kind of wakes up, or he has this like moment.
He has a gasp.
Gasp as she sings Colton's song. More about Elliot's dad is coming out, aka the hole that we see in the wall.
Mhm.
There is a growing relationship between Kat and Thomas Coyle. You feel the tension between them. Is it a mix of love? Is it a mix of hate? We don't know. Surprise, Nick is back. I actually thought we would never see him again. So that was actually a real surprise.
So that's how you
Um,
really feel.
Dell and Sam, although they have said they were friends and she set boundaries, it still feels like there's more.
No, they're on. Yeah.
Jacob wasn't the good kid Kat remembered, according to Thomas Coyle, and that it was actually his idea to skim the rum.
Yikes.
Nick ends up giving Alice love advice, which is also a
Weird.
very, and it
Like,
also is like,
why?
does Nick know who Alice is? I don't know. Noah and Alice kiss in her bedroom. Uh-oh. And then the negatives. So Noah and
Yeah.
Alice are on this hunt to learn more about Lingermore, what happened at Lingermore Estate. And there's a picture that shows blood, a mask, and glasses. But Alice immediately jumps to the conclusion that Elliot is involved, which we see Elliot's journal. He might be, but we have yet to know what happens. Okay,
Just
that's it.
unbelievable, guys.
Go ahead.
How do we still not know what's? Remember, I told you, I was like, I'm afraid that we're not going to find out what happens at Lingermore until like the last two episodes, and we are
Or
starting
season
following
3
that
if they
cadence.
renew.
Oh, Lord have mercy. You better not do that to us. I'm pretty sure it's coming out next. Well, it better.
Better.
We find out a little bit more, but I feel like we'll have to talk about that in the way we see it because I won't talk about previews until then. If you guys don't want, if certain people don't want preview information. Um, but yes, Love is Blind, the reunion for season 6 comes out today. Cannot wait to watch.
I know.
Because talk about love triangles, love squares. So now we have Alice, Nick, and Noah. But Alice, okay. Did you feel like Alice made the first move? Like she initiated that kiss,
Oh, yeah, with Noah? Yeah.
right?
Yes.
But then she's having a conversation, like getting advice from Nick. Like how and why did that happen? And why did, okay, sorry, that's moving into dead ends. You have a Del, Rita, and Sam love triangle, which that was weird. Of
It
like
was
Rita being like,
weird.
oh, it's over. And there's two conversations of like, oh, do you know who it is? And Del kind of like plays it off like, what is happening? That was a surprise.
Mm.
Now we have Kat, Elliot, and Thomas, I think is like our new love triangle, right?
So we think Elliot's gonna be in that triangle. I hope
Because the
not.
ship names out there are Calliot and Tomcat. Apparently, those are the hashtags. Okay, but I think Kyler Lee on the interview said there's Calliot, Tomcat, and Katana. What is Katana? Katana?
At
I can't figure that one out,
on no. No.
right? Tell us in the comments what you thought about that one. I can't figure that one out. Um, but yeah, I'm curious. So the surprising moment for me that kind of was like, I don't know how I feel about this scene, was the scene where Kat, because she's reacting to Jacob waking up and he's in a delirium and he's scared of Kat, like he does because he
Right.
doesn't recognize her. And she runs out, she's worked up, she's angry, which like bless Kyler Lee. Her emotional outbursts and
Right.
like her
So
like
good.
panic attack and what grief looks like is so real.
Mm.
Like nothing makes sense. There's no logic. Um, what were your thoughts of when Thomas picked up Kat and hung her over the ocean?
I was confused at that,
Okay.
actually.
Yeah.
I felt like it was an unnecessary move.
Yeah, because like he said she needed to cool down. Like, what was he
Cool.
gonna do? Throw her in there, like to
Yeah.
knock her out of her emotional outburst? Like, and then it ends up, I know they were like trying to create more scenes of chemistry, but like it
It
was,
felt flat for me. Like it
yeah,
just felt unnecessary.
because it didn't quite do that. Okay, that's the thing
Yeah.
that I want to talk about is I feel like there's three main scenes here where you're seeing the chemistry between Thomas and Kat, right? So you have the
Mm-hmm.
scene where in the beginning where he tells her to be quiet and Kat constantly is like, "Oh my gosh, shut up." Just talks too much, talks too loud, offers too much information. Where Goodwin's men are searching in the woods, and so Thomas knocks Kat down to hide.
Right.
But literally, and I guess this is part of Dead Ends, but I just wanted to know what you thought of everything because this is where we break down like healthy and unhealthy behaviors and romantic relationships. Like, clearly, there's wanting to create some chemistry there when he's like basically laying on top of her, right, to protect her.
Yes.
But when she says like there could be like chemistry there, she says Thomas and he says yes, which it killed it. Like, why? And then, so then the beach scene or the cove scene, which I love that
Right.
that's the cove. I love that they had that scene like in a cove that we're
Mm-hmm.
familiar with, but totally different viewpoint of the cove, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love that. However, what I feel like it didn't help the character development storylines besides what they were saying, but it was like the actions weren't matching. Like both those scenes, it felt like the actions weren't matching what they were trying to accomplish in the scene.
I agree.
The third one
Okay.
is when Goodwin's men are about to come, but no one knows that. And Kat and Thomas are talking outside the lighthouse against emotionally charged. We're losing time. Jacob might,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, lose his life. We need to get him to the pond. They're just talking, and then Thomas cups her face and moves her hair, like brushes her hair back, like it was just such a. I get okay. There's more chemistry there, but it just felt so
Random?
like the last two scenes felt random. No chemistry. You're creating more chemistry, but this is still random. What are your thoughts on this?
Well,
And
I don't think I think I'm a fan of this Thomas Coyle cat.
yes,
So I actually did feel like there was some chemistry. I just didn't like I thought the witch comment was kind of like tongue in cheek, like teasing, like
sure,
almost like, you know, I don't know, trying to get a rise out of her. I did not like the throwing her in the ocean because it didn't land for me.
yeah.
I just that scene didn't make sense to me, or that gesture. Um but I don't know. I think I'm looking at it through like I like this relationship, so I want to see these moments. So it doesn't really bother me.
So, like, if this develops into like a full-fledged relationship, how
What's gonna
it's
happen?
starting, yeah, like, what are your thoughts on like, is this starting as a healthy Are we bonding in a healthy way? Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I have no idea in that regard, because even with what Thomas was saying, um like the times are different. So your perspective on maybe what is good and survival, like
Yeah.
moral compass in the 1800s,
Yeah,
was
totally.
possibly very different than it is nowadays, and what people would do to just stay alive and protect their family. So I don't know if I'm thinking about it from that perspective, although I should. I'm just like, I'm selfishly tired of the Cat and Elliot stuff.
Yeah.
And that wasn't working out, and that was definitely not healthy. So something, I don't know. And again, I really feel like we don't know the real Thomas Coyle, because we think he's a bad guy, but it turns out it was actually possibly Jacob's idea to do the
Yeah.
skimming. We still don't know. Also, what are the logistics? Like, is Thomas going to come to the future? Can he time travel? We thought we saw him at the Founders Day uh, event. So, still a lot of unknowns for me.
So many unknowns, which I feel like can lead us into the dead ends. Do you have anything more for surprising detours that you want to discuss?
No.
So, dead ends is usually for our Hallmark movies, we call this Agu Oi with the Poodles already, where we have plot holes, continuity issues. But a lot of times, The Way Home didn't have a lot of those because we were so mesmerized. Okay, this is the thing. I went back and watched and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many that we
Yeah.
missed.
Well,
However, because we didn't
mhm,
used to have a lot of dead ends, what we didn't like, and that has increased the last 3 episodes.
that's true.
What's happening? Um, but in discussing kind of what we didn't like, I just want to finish up the Cat and Thomas conversation. Um, is she just going to love him because of his connection to Jacob? And how he was basically, because he considers they have that whole conversation in the cove. I love that they had a fire in the cove. They come back there to talk and kind of like they call a truce, but they're like
Mm,
bonding. Where he basically is the first time telling her like he considers Jacob a brother. That's how close they are. Like you don't know
mm,
that until that point, right?
mhm,
Um, but also that conversation didn't like when it was trying to be like meaningful and inspirational about the stars and stuff. It just
mhm,
didn't hit for me.
mm.
How about you?
That
And
did feel a little bit forced, like
yeah,
trying to create connection in the
yeah.
story, and it felt less organic and more intentional, which I don't love. Um, One thing that I had, I know we'll stick with the Thomas thing, but this has to do with Thomas and Kat. Um, Thomas dresses Kat as a man to disguise her, but she just looks like the White Witch in man's clothing. I did not. I was like, that to me is a continuity error. Like, try harder, put her hair up, like make her look like a man. She literally looked like the same person, just in men's clothing.
That was my thing in the cold open, which I usually love, but didn't love this one. She runs home in the White Witch nightgown,
Yeah.
but they did nothing with that.
Hmm.
Like, wouldn't you want Alice to realize, oh my gosh, my mom's the White Witch? Or like, because she went home in that white nightgown and she comes out in modern day clothing.
I know, and
Like
goes back
she
in modern day
So
clothing.
I was confused. So that was my thing with this episode. Wardrobe felt different to me. What wardrobe wasn't
Yeah.
as on point. Because even Alice's outfit, where she sees Nick for the first time, or Nick sees her because he can't find anyone else,
Uh-huh.
she looks frumpy to me. She's wearing this like waffle. I can't tell if it's a sweatshirt or
Mm.
just a Henley. Um, which Hallmark loves their Henleys. Usually for the men. And I was like, what's happening? Like, I don't know, just the pants, the jacket, like is that what's in and I just don't know what's in right now?
It is. I actually loved Alice's outfit.
Okay, it's just me. I'm just old. That just says that
No,
I'm
you're
old.
not old. It's just it's kind of that oversized, but you had that cute little blue top on with the wide leg jeans. I
No,
don't know.
I
I liked
love
it.
that one. I'm talking about the one before.
Oh, where it felt like sweatshirt, and I think those were
Yeah,
her pajamas.
No, it was jeans.
It was jeans. Okay, I need to go back. Maybe I'm
You have to
thinking
go
of
back and
something
look at
else.
that one.
Okay.
Apparently, that one outfit. I love the next one. That was really cute. But this one just like it set off the whole. I was like, it just felt off to me. And
Okay,
I
I'm
was
gonna go
like,
back and look at that.
I think the impression that I got was like, oh my gosh, Nick is so much better dressed than Alice. Like the
Mm,
entire episode. It threw me off.
gotcha.
Um, why is Thomas always playing with coins? It's really
Because they didn't
bothers
have
me.
phones in the 1800s. What are they doing with their hands? I'm joking.
Oh
Yeah,
my
it is
gosh.
true. I think it's adding to like that sinister vibe, or that I think they're just trying to give him that kind of like criminal vibe.
I guess.
Gangster vibe. 1800
Gangster.
gangster.
It's like Tyler Hines toothpicks. Anyways, when in that scene where Thomas is protecting Kat because they're hiding from Goodwin's men behind that
Yeah.
log, the dude is holding the knife too close to her like neck, face, chest. Like,
Yeah.
what in the world? Right?
Yeah, definitely. Again, sinister vibes.
Camera
Like,
angle, like what is happening? Um, and I just have a couple little ones. Like Nick goes into the point and is ordering from Alice. You know, she's taking his order, and he talks
mhm.
about how like he's been dreaming about the Points Turkey Club.
Is that
We're in a
unfathomable?
yeah, I mean, okay. Can't you have picked something else? Like this is a seaside town, like a turkey club.
That's true. That's true. Like maybe a lobster roll.
Thank you. Cause like if I'm gonna bring back boba breaks, I want places to go and things to eat. I'm not gonna go to New Brunswick for a turkey club.
That's funny.
Like
You're right.
anyway, do you have any more? I have a few other ones, but
The only thing that I said, which I said at the top of the episode, is I know you gave this a 9, but I just really felt like everything really dragged on. Even we had a lot of scenes with Kat and Thomas. I know there's supposed to be development, but it felt a little redundant. Um, there was a lot of time in the basement of the lighthouse. I don't know. It was slow moving for me. And I think they're gonna tie it all together in the last 3 episodes, but like I wish there was more in every episode.
same. I have to say that like overall, I gave it a 9 because I realized how much they did still put a lot in this episode, but it was things that we weren't asking for. Nobody was asking
Mm,
for Nick. Nobody was asking for Noah to be in on, Alice looking into what was happening at Lingermore.
right.
Nobody was asking for the way that Dell and Sam's relationship is playing. Like we had other questions about other things. We didn't need
Yes.
more about these certain storylines.
Yes.
For me,
Agreed.
that's the dead end here. Like,
Yes.
but they did put a lot into
You're
this
right, but
episode.
it was just things to me that didn't serve the overall purpose and like mission. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I just, again, that's why I think it felt slow to me.
And this is the third episode
From
where we've met adult Jacob and the kid still doesn't have a line.
I know.
Which is so funny because in the interview that had, Kat, Susanna, and Thomas, the interviewer was like, so are we gonna hear Jacob talk? And Chris is like, well, let's just say there are more audible parts of Jacob's performance. And I was like, oh my gosh, he
That's
described it
hilarious.
really well. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. So anyway, all that just to say, I went back and I think it was episode 3. So this isn't even season 1. But in episode 3 of season 2, Dell has a cordless phone. So that landline where she's waiting for a call, remember in the last episode where she had to
Yes.
run because she was outside with Sam Bishop and the horse, and she hears the phone ring and she has to run, and we're all like,
Yes.
if
Oh,
she
it's a
was
different
waiting for a
phone.
call, she would have had a freaking cordless phone with her because in episode 3,
Wow.
everyone's calling, bringing all that food over, and she puts the phone, a cordless phone. It's not a iPhone. It's not like a cell phone.
Good
She
catch.
puts it in the freezer. So then I went back and I was like, oh my goodness, you guys, there's quite a lot of that because I think where I expected, and granted, hearing Alex Clark and Marley Reed talk about it again, about how either one of them or both of them have to be on set to be like, to catch all the continuity things.
Mhm.
They were like, yeah, in the writer's room, there's a lot of brain breaking, like brain hurting things that they have to think through because of all the
Yeah.
different storylines, the different sets. So now there's 3 different sets, 4
Right.
more. There's a lot more this season. So I give it to them, like it's a lot. But I even went back and watched that last scene of season 1, episode 10, which is still our most played episode, is The Way Home, season 1, episode 10. Um, where the White Witch scene, because they did obviously had to refilm it for season 2. Kat's wig is different. The
Yeah.
White Witch wig in season 1 is actually curlier,
Yes.
but
That's why I didn't like that scene because it did not feel like the original scene.
it's so sad. So there's so much that we were hoping. Actually, Bran from Deck the Hallmark gave words to it that I really appreciated. He said there was a lot in season 2 that just felt convenient, whereas in season 1 it felt intentional. Like, oh my
Oh, that is so good.
you are planning
So
this.
true.
Like, so
Yes.
I think that's what I expected. Also, like, also in season 1, there was like so much of like, they make you think this is it, or even in the first 3 episodes of season 2, where it's like, oh, they lead you to think this is happening, but it's not. They change it.
Yeah,
Like,
and I think that's been my thing so far, and I've said this before, is like season 1 felt very thought out. It felt like they had the end episode from the beginning and everything. This, I'm sure they had the end episode, but this season feels like they're building the ship at sea. Things are
totally.
not as, I don't know, concise. It's not as like well thought out, in my opinion. I don't
Yeah.
have as many like these moments of like, oh, that was so good. Did you see that coming? Like, I'm not
Mhm.
having as many of those aha moments. So it makes me sad, but I still would love a season 3.
Absolutely. We must, because I feel like they could bring it back. I think what it is this season, they're spread out between too many storylines.
Right.
But I think they could bring it all back. It just was disappointing because the only thing that got close to it in this episode of like, I need a better word for this, where it's like they make you think something's gonna happen, but then they change it up on you, is when we think Thomas got shot. But it was like not even 10 seconds where we realized, oh, it was just the Goodwin's men giving the all clear. And Kat's
Right.
like, right? That's it. Shall we move on?
Let's do it.
The way we see it in The Way Home is observations and theories, because everyone's observations are different. So then you get different theories. I think this is the first week that I texted Lala like fan theories,
Yeah.
not just podcaster theories, fan theories in these Facebook groups. There's this woman legit made like, what do you call it? A pie, not a pie chart. It was like I'm sure there's a better name for.
It is kind of like a wheel. I don't know. I've used them before. I it's slipping my mind, but it is an elaborate illustration of theories.
Okay, this was a really long post in the Way Home Facebook group. There's several now. There used to only be like 2. Now there's several. Shout out to Francesca, who was engaging the more intelligent sci-fi nerds. She was going into the different, because there's different rules for time travel, right? She goes into, this is from her post. I couldn't even follow the whole thing, but she says the temporal paradox can be broken into 5 subcategories. And basically, what her graph or pie chart, there's a name for it. Sorry, it's escaping me, is a closed paradox loop, which I was like, okay, I get what she's saying here, which is what I'm afraid of. There's no beginning or end in this storyline. This is a closed loop that continues in motion, and it keeps repeating itself, seemingly out of order in time, where like the looped events we see play out all pieced together in the end. So it's kind of like you have this huge loop, and she compares it to like how tiny gears move in a much larger clock, right? So you have like tiny gears and big gears, but they all work together. So like what came first, the chicken or the egg, basically, right? Where it's like, so now what's going to happen? Like, does this continue to
Mhm.
keep happening over and over again? And is Kat going to be stuck in the 1800s or want to stay there?
Well, I think that she's going I don't think she's gonna stay there because of Alice, but I don't know what's gonna happen.
Because if the next episodes play out that Alice is mad at both Kat and Elliot, and she doesn't want to see them again. You don't know what you don't know.
It's true.
When I went back and listened to the Deck the Hallmark podcast with Marley Reed and Alex Clark, the creators of the show, showrunner, they mentioned that there's two sets of rules, that the pond rules are separate from the time travel rules. That
Huh.
blew my mind.
Okay.
So like when you have time travel, you have to have like there's like 3 different sets of rules that you can go by. And when asked if people could travel into the future, they wouldn't answer.
Huh.
And so now I'm super curious about the pond rules. And my theory about how it's like certain family lines, I feel like still applies.
I agree. I agree with that.
I have more, but what else you got here?
Okay, I just have 2 things. One is this is a loose theory that I'm not 100% sure I still believe, but I want to. So, I wanna believe that Colton is alive, okay?
Yeah, me too. Which
But
Dan is like, that can't happen, that it would ruin the show for him. But I still want Colton to be
what?
alive. I
This is
know.
my thinking is
Okay.
like Colton. So this kind of applies to that theory about time traveling in the pond doesn't work the way that we think it does. And so
Yeah.
Colton has been using the pond, but he's not going to the places that Kat and Alice have gone.
Ooh. Yep.
Okay? So that kind of supports that whole theory. But my thinking is that we will not see him if he is alive till the very end as
Hmm.
soon as Dell is actually having a relationship with Sam, like an established relationship, and then Colton's gonna come back.
And Byron. And then we have a love
Oh,
square.
Byron, I forgot about Byron.
Because when I think back to season 1, Byron and Andy, I was like, what were you guys thinking? You were so intentional season 1. Those couldn't possibly just be throwaway characters. Like, they have to be more meaningful to the storyline than just seeing how these women have lived. I don't know. I feel like it has to have meaning, but it might not, which is disappointing.
My other theory is that we still, if we reference back to the very first episode where this lady is holding little Jacob's hand and
Oh,
like
yes.
telling him not to go back in the pond or whatever, like
Mhm.
clearly people know about the power of the pond and we have
Yep.
yet to meet people. But
Yeah.
my thinking is that Thomas knows. And maybe he is also a time traveler. I don't know. I
Yeah.
just feel like there's more to Thomas's story that we don't know. And my prediction is that maybe Thomas and Jacob go to the future. I don't know.
Yeah. I think Kat is trying to bring Jacob to the future.
Oh,
Or maybe
definitely.
when Thomas tries to time travel, he gets stuck in a loop that Colton's in.
Or maybe Jacob is not going to be able to time travel. The pond is going to keep him in the 1800s.
It's very possible.
Okay, that's all.
I
That's all
think
I have.
I think that the Landry soil has magic like the pond does somehow.
Oh,
They talked about the Landry soil so much at the
yeah.
beginning of this season. It's like, you're gonna talk more about that? Like, because the key wasn't in the pond water, the key was in the soil.
Very true.
I have a few questions.
Okay.
Like, does Elliot own the house or does his dad still own it?
Mm.
Who is the ghost at the lighthouse? Is it Jacob or Thomas? Because
Ooh.
Rita's haunted tours of the lighthouse. And when Kat and Elliot, there's a flashback to when they're younger in the field trips, and they talk about the same stories every time at the field trip. Who's the ghost? Um, How does Elliot know the pond won't let Kat take the medicine? What else has happened for him to know that for a fact?
Good question.
If Goodwin's men hadn't arrived, would Thomas have kissed Kat?
Yes, I think so.
Lighthouse. If Nick remembers Alice, did you feel like Nick was remembering Alice?
I feel like
In
yes.
her
Oh,
voice?
100%. And I
Right?
feel like maybe Nick is gonna end up finding out about the pond or finding out about Alice.
What
I
if
just have
he
that
starts time
feeling
traveling?
if the pond lets him.
It's just so, but if Nick remembers, then who else can? Like, what is it that
Hmm.
makes him suddenly remember? Like, Kat didn't until she did.
Interesting.
And this has, this is the loop here. Like, what comes first? Like, who starts time traveling first then? And do they keep trying to stop the accident? Or does it keep looping into other? It's like in Loki. That's like that's my
I
most
know.
recent time travel.
Right?
I use that as my measuring stick
I
of
know.
like
I know.
starting new branches in
So funny.
multiverses. Anyway,
That's hilarious.
in the previews, they put a lot in the previews. That short one. Number one, we have Jacob, who I feel like is kind of talking in a British accent. Yes, no.
Oh. Well, I
Also,
haven't seen the preview, so I
oh,
have to
okay.
watch it. Yeah.
Let me sum it up for you. There was a lot. Number one, Jacob saying to Kat, "Why didn't you come for me sooner?"
Oh, I did
Number
see that
two,
part. Yeah.
Kat
Okay.
is telling Dell, "You can't sell our land," and Dell saying, "Why not?" Number three, you're assuming that Alice is telling Elliot, "You keep telling me I can't change things, but things are changing."
Mm,
And then Dell telling Alice, "You would think your mother and I could move on, but some wounds go deep." I feel like that's about the linger more stuff.
yeah.
And then of course Alice talking to Elliot, which that's what the sneak peek is that scene where Alice is confronting Elliot before she sees what happens in Lingermore, but she's about to time travel to see, but she wants him to tell her, like, what did you guys do? And he's hesitating, as we saw Monica do in this episode.
Yeah.
And he's telling her, "For what it's worth, I hope you can forgive me."
Hmm.
And then we hear Kat saying, "If I can bring Jacob home, then it would have all been worth it." Like, I think things go bad in all timelines, um,
Oh.
which is heart-wrenching. You better give me some 90s nostalgic music on top of all this. But in the previews, we see, okay, so you know how like when Noah and Alice develop or do that thing where they could see what's in the film,
Hmm.
we see a mask next to the Elliot's glasses and some blood.
Yeah.
Well, that mask is on Alice in the preview.
Oh, the
Okay.
plot thickens.
Okay. And then I'm going to shout out to Debbie in the Way Home Facebook, because in Elliot's notes, his journal is on 10/28/2007, which
Hmm.
that the article came out 10/27/2007, right, about the Lingermore incident.
Yeah.
So Debbie put in that the article Alice had was dated 10/27/2007. Alice was born July 8th of 2008, which means that Kat would have been pregnant at the
Pregnant.
Lingermore incident. Is this drama all about Alice's existence?
Yeah, probably. And I bet Brady and Elliot maybe fight or something.
So intense. Listen, people, episode 8 better give us Lingermore. I have a feeling it might not. I have a feeling it's a Colton thing and like the Colton storyline, and we're not going to get it until episodes 9 and 10.
I think
And
you're right.
I think I called it. I told them it would be disappointing, but we have to have a season 3. I know you can fix all the intentional stuff. Did you know that the actors don't even know like what's happening? Like, they film 2 episodes at a time and they only get the script like 2 to 3 weeks before they film.
I believe that.
And so Sadie actually didn't know what happened at the what the Linger More event is. So like
Oh,
her
wow.
emotions, she's like, I feel like I went with like the audience or like went with Alice. Like she really didn't know what happened.
Oh, wow.
So that was for real. Anyways, love it. Any final thoughts or
No,
quotes?
I'm excited for next week. I'm excited to see the rest of it unfold.
Oh my gosh. There was this one quote that caught me. Not really a quote, just when Thomas told Kat that you'll be safer as a man. I felt that deep. For those of us, and you guys, we'll talk about it on a future episode, but I had to get in touch with like my femininity in my mid 20s because I realized like I walk through life with not more masculine features because I needed that to be strong.
Mm,
And that reminded me. And
wow.
also like just how Dell is acting. Anyways, we'll end with that. Cannot wait for the next episode. I get to watch with my kids, so it'll be really fun.
Thanks so much for breaking script with us. Please share this episode on your socials and tag at the Breaking Script Podcast. Follow and hit the notification bell button so you never miss an episode. And if you haven't yet, please rate and review an Apple Podcast so we can spread more Hallmark glimmers around the world. Thanks so much. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye, team.